there's repeatability. It's easy to clean. It's going to cut food waste. It cuts the radiant heat that the cook feels. So there are benefits, just like this has benefits over my rotary phone.
That's such a good way of thinking about it for the long game. This is where we're headed, and that's where the goal is. I'm so excited to be here. I somehow talked Wade into letting me do a sustainability series. I just felt like it was really important for folks in the industry, for designers, for consultants, for dealers, for operators, for owners, to have really meaningful conversations about sustainability and make sure that has a voice at the table when they're working on different projects. I'm thrilled to have the guest that I have, Richard Young. He's the Director of Outreach at Frontier Energy Foodservice Technology Center. He has given thousands of world-class presentations and classes while he's been there for the past 30 years. If I think of somebody who's really moved the needle on energy efficiency, it's definitely him. He's been a mentor to me and to numerous folks in the industry. And then as a side note, we have a common love of bluegrass, as you'll see some of his musical instruments behind him. But Richard, thank you so much for joining me today.
Tarah, thanks for having me. And yes, we've been doing this for a little while now, and I'm glad that we're getting a forum to reach out to ever more people.
Agreed. So I just want to jump right into it, because really the buzzwords that we're hearing right now when it comes to energy efficiency are decarbonization, so essentially reducing carbon output, and then and electrification when it comes to commercial kitchens. And I'm just curious, from your point of view, why should we be talking about these issues? Why should we care about these issues?
And that's a really good question. I think it confuses a lot of people, and so I like to start with the most obvious part of that, is that we have to reach a net zero carbon economy by 2050. And of course, that's ever more important for commercial food service, because we're already seeing the effects of climate change on the environment. And all of the natural resources for commercial food service come from the environment. Where I am in Northern California, the grape growers up in the North Bay in Northern California, they're now facing changes in the flavors of their grapes, burning from the sun, mildew if they protect the grapes from the sun, and then the fact that now every year their grapes are getting covered with ash and dust and God knows what from our California fire seasons. So we have to do something. And we'll reach decarbonization by creating a clean zero energy source. That's on the books. Clean energy, we call that. That could either be renewable electricity, wind, solar, or it could be renewable natural gas. It could be hydrogen. We're working on a lot of ways to do that. But we also need to that's an expensive pathway, rebuilding our energy system. So we also need to really embrace energy efficiency. That's the part that's most important to us today. The pundits who are looking at this kind of stuff, they expect that we're going to create about half of our future clean energy through energy efficiency. The greenest energy that's out there is the energy you never used. And I would, the reason that this comes up is that things are shifting. We've had kind of a voluntary approach in the past, almost I call it the tree hugger approach. Hey, let's save energy. It's good for the environment. That really hasn't worked. We've moved the needle some, but not like we should. And so what we're going to see, and what we're already seeing, is codes and standards. This came up in a meeting back in about 2014 that I went to, and they said, hey, you're going to start to see what we call REACH codes out there, which is basically laws, and that'll be updates of building laws, like the ASHRAE standards that people might be familiar with, or in California there's Title 24. But we now have to have sort of a carrot and a stick, and before where it was mostly carrot, so that means we have to start learning this stuff and dealing with it. I think one good thing is that we hope to have more carrot to go along with the stick, And in our world, what we're pushing for is more rebates to try and help change behavior. And this Instant Rebates program that I'm out talking to everybody about is one of those ways to do it. It's up and running in about 12 states now. And
that's great. Well, I definitely want to talk about, the carrot and the stick piece, at least, if we could start maybe a little bit with just the codes. It was really interesting to see what had happened in Berkeley. I feel like they were the first city in the country who essentially attempted to pass a law, or did pass a law related to electrification for all restaurants. That's what's been interesting to me. It's no longer just high-level goals that apply to all building industries. It's actually specific to commercial kitchens as well. And now there's a lot more jurisdictions that have codes related to it. Most recently, I think I saw Hawaii and New York City as passing codes related to all electrification. I know there's been some pushback just for smaller restaurateurs and mom and pop locations where they're a little bit concerned about cost, but everything I've seen has just been new construction. So looking at more of that code piece, that stick piece that you talked about, kind of what have you been seeing around the country?
Yeah, Tarah, you're right. I keep telling people this train is on the tracks. So far, there are over 70 municipalities nationwide, most of them being in California. Probably 50 of those 70 are in California. But you're correct. It does include cities like New York City, which is major. The REACH codes so far have applied to new construction, and they're typically called electric REACH codes, although they also get called gas bans, which I constantly tell people, don't call it a gas ban. That just sounds so negative, but there are some feelings involved in this, moving towards electrification, or trying to lower our needs on fossil fuels. And there has been pushback. There's about 20 states now that have passed laws at the state level. Remember, so far these REACH codes have been municipal. There are about 20 states that have passed laws at the state level banning the ban, saying, you city, for a specific example, Florida passed a law saying that Miami cannot ban gas lines, restrict gas lines into buildings. Of course, that's a bit of a paper tiger, because there's always ways around codes, and what a city will do, which is exactly what Berkeley did. Coming back to the Berkeley example, is they'll say, sure, you can put a gas line in there, but your building has to be set up to go all electric in a few years. So who in their right mind wants to put in two complete energy systems into a building? So people will just make them electric and not put the gas lines in. Some cities have actually done carve-outs for food service, which I think is good. You end up in some situations with, a mom and pop restaurant that's doing pizza and has a great big gas oven. Going all electric can impact them financially. So yeah, it's right at the moment. It's a bit of a shotgun approach, and I think it's an important thing for us to keep our eyes on.
Well, definitely some of the projects that we've been working on, a little bit larger, non-commercial, definitely early adopters in the higher ed space or in workplace where, they have all electric goals, either because of jurisdiction or just commitment. I feel like a lot of the dining directors or chefs are, they say, oh my gosh, all electric, what does that mean? And it's been interesting because it's not too terribly different, at least from what we've seen and how we've worked on it. The biggest ones being the induction ranges and induction woks, and then not using that under-fired charboiler, just because it doesn't seem like, at least for now, there's not a exact option on the market for electric that can hit that high heat. And then of course there's just a lot of education that goes along with it, just because it is a different style of cooking. It is a slightly different process when you're using that induction equipment. I know there's also induction serving that's been around for a while too, but the largest impact we've seen is with chefs and just trying to partner them with different manufacturers or have them go to test kitchens to be able to learn how to rewrite some of their recipes. And it's been some great benefit just because of consistency. I know, Richard, it's something you talk about all the time of the benefits of induction. One of the questions I had though was about, I know you get to work closely with the manufacturers. What are you seeing on the horizon? At least for us right now, it doesn't feel like there's a lot. There's some options on the market, but would like to see or like to hear kind of what we have to look forward to when it comes to different innovations or different options down the road.
Yeah, and all great questions, and I love that keep calm and march forward kind of notion. I think, and you also make a really great point. FCSI members are typically working with higher end clients. You're not necessarily designing for mom and pops. And many of your clients, including BNI and university, they're going to go all electric because they have social responsibility goals that are based on zero carbon. So for FCSI members, it's important to learn how to do electric kitchens. And in most cases, it's completely transparent to the people in the kitchen of whether they're working on electric equipment or gas equipment. If you look at the majority of traditional equipment like fryers and convection ovens and griddles and steamers, the person in the kitchen has no notion whether that's gas or electric. They perform exactly the same. The place that you run into challenges is in places like woks. And certainly I love Asian cooking, and a lot of your FCSI, your clients are big on this, and that's been a challenge. There is one full-sized induction wok available in the U.S. We have one in our facility in San Ramon. And I know of another manufacturer who's just about to bring a second one online in the U.S., full size. And by the way, these induction woks are way more powerful than their gas equivalents. In fact, the manufacturer who's working on the new product has already dialed down the power a couple of times because it's just too powerful. They're so efficient, they're too powerful. And I think once you see a couple of those, and you as designers and your clients, your customers start asking for these, I think other manufacturers are going to start bringing them over, because I went to Asia, I went to Shanghai back in 2014, and at the Hotel X show, and I saw loads of induction woks. They're out there. It's just we're slow to adopt. Induction cooktops are there in various formats. They're getting better. Some of them are really amazing, and I think the same thing. We're just going to see more and more innovation in that area. The broiler still is that difficult thing to handle. But I was talking to a designer recently who knows he has a big project coming up the line in the next 4 or 5 years, big hospital project, and it's got to be all electric. And the way he'll deal with the broilers is he's shifting the way that he thinks about production. He'll do most of the protein cooking in combination ovens, and then he'll get a small electric broiler or a grooved griddle to do the finishing, to do the char marks on whatever he's trying to finish, the 2-footer or something like that. So yeah, you have as designers, you have to start thinking about how you can think outside the box a little bit and overcome these couple of challenges, but really it's only a couple of challenges. That's
it's true. I know that some of the projects that we've worked on too, or even looking at grooved griddle, I know that there's some inductions out there that can get as hot as a French top. So just trying to think creatively about it, I think that's so key. One of the common questions that we get too is, if all electric is a fit or not, is how is this going to affect the electrical load? And that comes up a little bit more on renovations for sure. And even if we try to, where appropriate, use 480 volt, there's still some concerns about that. And then another point that often comes up is this really the best decision when it comes to sustainability? If certain jurisdictions or locations don't really have the green infrastructure, it's possible that they could be using more carbon by going all electric. So I guess I just, what advice do you have when those conversations come up with clients?
Yeah, it's a great point, and that's why, Tarah, that you're seeing all of the REACH codes pointing towards new construction, Because in a new construction, in new buildings, you can run a big enough transformer, you can put in a panel, you can do all electric without any big challenge. You get into, a job that you and I have talked about, an existing university that has 100-year-old buildings and is trying to redo their dining facility. They may not have a big enough panel, a big enough electrical panel, and upsizing that panel may cause them to need a bigger transformer from the utility, and it can end up being really expensive. So in retrofit situations, going electric is a challenge. Once again, if you look at it, you may be able to replan the kitchen, you may be able to use different pieces of equipment and get around that, but it's not totally easy. You also bring up another really great point, which is that in an awful lot of states, the electric supply is not clean. It's still, anywhere from moderately dirty to very dirty. And so in some states, going all electric could actually emit more carbon. But once again, we're talking to the FCSI designer audience and your clients. And your clients tend to take a longer arc. They're building, bigger and better kitchens and buying equipment and looking at the long game. And in the long game, we know that electricity is going to get cleaner, that we are going to have a clean energy supply out there. So that's a reason to do it now. And once again, your clients are really looking at zero net carbon. Some of those universities will put up their own photovoltaic systems, or they will go and buy clean power. Or some of your big corporate customers, will buy clean power. So in FCSI world, it makes sense to learn this and try to apply it.
That's such a good way of thinking about it for the long game. That's this is where we're headed, and that's where the goal is. Another item that comes up a lot is, moving to all electric is going to be too expensive, or induction is, it doesn't have the life that this induction range doesn't have the life that my gas range does, or it's going to require so much more maintenance. When, we can talk about return on investment, we can talk about, capital costs versus operating costs. I guess what recommendations do you have, or kind of what's your overall thought when that question comes up?
Yeah, it's, once again, it's a great question, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, and on both sides. But coming back to what I mentioned earlier about, a staff member working on an electric convection oven or a gas convection oven doesn't know the difference between the fuel coming into that appliance. It's similar in the manufacturing world. The major manufacturers have made equivalent electric and gas appliances for decades. And so if you go to buy their gas convection oven, the price for that is roughly the same as the electric convection oven. In some cases, the electric may be a little bit lower. I did some analysis for a chain a few years ago on their fryers and their electric fryers, and they were buying very nice, high-end, efficient fryers. And the equivalent electric fryer was about $400 cheaper than the natural gas fryer. So not a huge number, but to go electric for typical equipment, it's not costing you more. It could actually be a little bit less. Now, in a lot of cases, the operating cost for the electric can be twice as much. In that fryer example, it cost 2 times more to run the electric fryer. And that's the point where you have to say, well, do I make some of this back in labor, cleaning, parts, whatever, Now, that's your typical equipment. You're correct. When we start talking induction cooktops cost a lot more than a gas cooktop. And some of that is the fact that induction is a 21st century technology, and your typical gas range top is really a 19th century technology. It'll last 1,000 years, but it's a very simple piece of metal, and with some tubes in it and no electronics. And a month after you install it, it's not functioning exactly the same way as when it was brand new. It's constantly sort of changing, and there's a certain amount of maintenance in there. And I love, I've pitched this out before. The analogy is when I was a kid, I had a big black telephone that was wired into the wall, and had a dial on it. And I have one of those in my basement, and if there was a place to plug it in, that phone would still work. And that's kind of like the gas range, indestructible, but I don't know anybody that would really want that phone over this phone. This is more like the Induction cooktop, the sort of 21st century, and there are benefits beyond just the fact you can cook on it. There's the notion that there's repeatability. It works the same way every day. It's easy to clean. It's going to cut food waste. It cuts the temperature, the radiant heat that the cook feels. So there are benefits, just like this has benefits over my rotary phone. Induction has that, but there is a premium on it.
It's interesting. Well, and even just thinking about, there's, other conversations about, future of kitchens as it relates to data collection and connectivity and control. So it's all, it's helping to push things in that direction, which, at least from my point of view, can help with some of the current challenges that we have as it comes to labor, and then even just efficient design of kitchen, so thinking ultimately, how can we have a truly efficient kitchen where I remember one time you told me the most efficient piece of equipment is a piece of equipment you don't need. So really thinking through, what that design and layout should be, in order to still meet the needs, menu needs, future proofing, but, just thinking through the design. With capital costs, I know that, there's truly an opportunity when it comes to rebates, because a lot of the clients we work with, like, their capital budget and their operating budget aren't the same piles of money. So it makes it a little challenging sometimes for us to talk about ROI in a real meaningful way. So for me, personally, sometimes the rebates feel a little intimidating, and that, there must be a lot of paperwork involved, and I can't help but notice the shirt that you're wearing. So I'd love to learn, I'd love to learn a little bit more about that and kind of how that could help me or other designers and consultants, be choosing more energy efficient equipment.
Yeah, and the first thing I want to say about rebates is that the utilities that sponsor these rebates, they really, really want you to get the money. It's kind of like a tax return. It's typically your money that you're getting back, particularly in California. We Californians pay into this big energy efficiency fund, and then we use those dollars for research and behavior change. And rebates are an incentive to create behavior change. It's a chance for you to do something new, to step up your equipment game, walk out with better equipment, and have the rebates pay that differential. So they make a lot of sense. And from a big picture standpoint, people always say, well, what's the hitch? Well, there's no hitch. The reason that we want people to use less energy as utility folks is that we don't want to have to build power plants. It costs a lot of money to build a power plant. It costs a lot of money to run wires and run pipes in the ground. Rebates are a way to keep the infrastructure down. If we keep the infrastructure down, we keep everybody's utility bills down. So they're a way of getting everybody to work together. But the challenge with rebates, you hit it right on the head, is that in the past, you have to go figure out your account number or go and fill out some paperwork and mail it in. Or if you're buying a bunch of equipment, then you got to fill out a bunch of paperwork. And if, in the FCSI world, a lot of people that you're working with, they're not direct business people. They're not mom and pops, For them to get a rebate, for a food service director at a university to go after a rebate, there's no incentive for them. It just drives them nuts. And why would they do it? So what we've shifted to in the utility world, in the rebate world, is we move towards this thing we call midstream rebates, are the most fun way to say it. The branded way to say that is we call them instant rebates. And the beauty of the instant rebate is if you buy what we call a qualified piece of equipment, which is an energy efficient piece of equipment that's been tested. Typically, it's been tested through our lab, right? So we know it's not a guessing game. We know that these pieces of equipment will save energy and cut carbon. So you buy that piece of equipment, you buy it from a dealer or manufacturer or any person selling the equipment who is participating in the program as well. Then you just get the rebate instantly. You get it as a discount. So for instance, Tarah, let's say you're a food service operator, you're a purchasing agent at a university. And you're going to buy a $30,000 20-pan combination oven. The rebate for that is a couple $1,000s, which is pretty good. I mean, we're talking, almost 10%, right? 8% or something like that. So when you go, and once again, you're going to be like, well, what's the hitch? Why do I get $2,000? Or how do I see this? Or how do I know somebody's not pocketing the money? When you see your invoice, it'll say, combination oven, $30,000, instant rebate, minus $2,000, Tarah's cost, $28,000. You walk out the door paying $28,000. We take care of everything else. So all our job, all we have to do is point you towards these pieces of qualifying equipment, and there are thousands of them. The easiest way to find the list is to go to our big statewide website in California, which is caenergywise.com. And the whole list is right there. It's super easy to use. And as a designer, I've always told people that list is your cheat list for the equipment that you want to specify. Because a lot of times people are calling saying, hey, is this efficient? Is that efficient? Where do I find this equipment? It's all in a spreadsheet right there on the California Energy Wise website. So we're trying to make it easy.
That's great, yeah. Richard. I mean, and then it's, I think it's going to be important too at the end of this podcast, just to have some references. There's some great sessions too that have been recorded or ones that are upcoming that I know that your team leads as well. That will be great if folks want to hear some more information. This has been a really wonderful conversation, Richard. I appreciate it so much. I guess my last question for you is, if there was only one thing that, a designer, an owner, an operator could do on, their new project, what would you recommend?
It is buying efficient equipment, because once again, we're going to get half of our carbon cutting by saving energy, by not using, energy. And so in the design world, what that means is, specifying efficient equipment and then making sure that somebody doesn't go and value engineer that out of your project. It breaks my heart when I see kitchens that are being designed and built for really high-end clients that I know have the money to buy quality equipment, and then I see that they have downgraded the equipment, and I'm thinking, okay, somebody in purchasing did a value engineer. And the truth is that, we tend to look at CapEx as the most important thing, but CapEx is, our capital cost is always a fraction of the operating cost. Okay, it's operating cost is usually 2, 4, sometimes 10 times higher than that initial purchase cost. So when you value engineer on the front end, you save yourself pennies and then you're wasting dollars. And if you can anyway get the operating people, the OpEx and the CapEx people in the same room and do some modeling, it immediately becomes obvious that you need to go with the efficient equipment. And yes.
What a great note to end on. That's my challenge to all the listeners is to bring up this conversation on your projects and then see it all the way through construction. But thank you everyone for joining and listening. Thank you, Richard. We'll make sure to post some more information if anyone wants to follow up and learn a little bit more.
Great. Thank you so much, Tarah.